You consistently say, I am not a CISO material. No one will hire me as a CISO. I won't be successful in the boardroom. I can't speak to executives. Beep. You've just destroyed any possibility of being world class. Welcome to Life of a CISO. I'm Dr. Eric Cole, your host, and we'll be taking you on a journey each week on what it takes to be a CISO and what are solutions that you can implement today if you are currently a Chief Information Security Officer or if you want to be one in the future. This is Life of a CISO. Welcome, welcome, welcome to this week's edition of Life of a CISO with yours truly, Dr. Eric Cole is in the house. Woohoo! Hope everyone is doing awesome. It's a pleasure to be with you from my studio. As always, if you have any comments, well, only nice things, because if you say mean things, I cry and get up. No, I'm joking. All feedback is good. Just post below the video any feedback, any comments, any topics you'd like me to cover. We love to hear from you. And thank you so much for being an avid listener, tuning in each week to Life of a CISO, where you know, what are we focused on? Let's hear it. On being world class. We want to be a world class CISO. And as I always say, if you want the slower route, join me every week. I'm going to give you the information, the tips and the tricks and what you need to go to that next level. But if you want to jump on the accelerated first class train and get there in 6 months or less, we do have the CISO certification. Kaylee on my team is ready to hear from you. Just go to secure-anchor.com/CISO, and she'd love to jump on a call with you, see if it's a right fit, see how we can help you, and see how we can help you become world class. As you know, I always like starting with a little motivation, a little incentive, because I believe to be a world class CISO, you have to be 360. You have to be in great shape. You have to be healthy. Because let's face it, if you're always sick, if you're in the hospital, if you're always getting injured, you're not going to be able to play full out. You're not going to be able to be world class. So to me, that's sort of that foundational piece. Then you have to have the right mindset. I'll tell you right now, if you have all the skills and all the knowledge and you know everything in my CISO cert, the 40 hours of knowledge transfer, you know inside and out, you can answer any question, but you consistently say, I am not a CISO material. No one will hire me as a CISO. I won't be successful in the boardroom. I can't speak to executives. Beep. You've just destroyed any possibility of being world class. The skill set, once again, is irrelevant if you don't have the right mindset. And the mindset is irrelevant if you're not healthy and focused and have the energy to be able to live the life of your dreams. So that's the reason why I cover all those pieces. Yes, my main focus is on the CISO skill set, but very often when I work with clients, it's the 1 or 2 millimeter distinction that changes everything. I work with somebody that worked for the government. They were a world-class leader. They knew security. They knew strategy. They briefed executives as part of their job in government, and now they're out, and for 2 years, they were struggling with getting a CISO job. They just couldn't get it. I spent 30 minutes on the phone with them, and when I talked, they said, okay, just explain to me what you're looking for. And they said, Eric, I just have to tell you, I'm not CISO material. Boom. I said, give me 15 minutes. You have an open mind? Essentially, boom, twisted that, saying, okay, is it really that you're not CISO material, or is it that you haven't held a CISO position? And they said, interesting. Well, I guess it's I haven't held a CISO position. I said, okay, great. What are the skills that are needed to hold a CISO position? And they went through them and I wrote them down and I said, okay, in your previous work, in your previous jobs, and I went through every item, have you done X? Yes. Have you done Y? Yes. And do you think in many of these areas you're equal or better than most folks? And they said, yes. So I said, can we say that in these skill sets, you're above average and maybe even world class? And they started smiling, saying, yes, I can agree with that. I said, great. So you are CISO material, ready to start a CISO job. Is that a more accurate description? And they said, yes. And I said, can you own that? Do you really believe that? And they said, yes. I said, repeat it, go over it, make it real. I kid you not. In 3.5 months, they had a CISO position for a Fortune 10 company. So once again, not saying it's always that easy, but sometimes it is. Sometimes one little phrase that you repeat without even realizing it. Because in this particular case, it was so funny because I asked him, I said, okay, the first thing you told me was I'm not CISO material. I said, how often do you say that? How often do you tell that to your spouse, your family members, friends, and others? And they thought about it and go, you know something? I've sort of used it so much. You ready? Here's the power. They said it, not me. It's become my identity. Boom! Like, that's the problem. If your identity is that you're not world-class CISO, can you see how that will be problematic to become a world-class CISO, right? So it's those little things that are sometimes the most important that you want to make sure you pay attention to. You could become a CISO, okay CISO, a good CISO. But like I said, world-class requires 360 alignment. And that's why I cover all these areas. So be careful of the words you speak. So I always like starting with a little story incentive. And what I want to cover today, because it's aligned with what I'm going to talk about, which is managing risk. There's some cases where you need to accept risk in an organization. So there's one of my favorite African proverbs. And I'm sure many of you heard it or heard variations of it. So I'm reciting from memory. So if I miss up a few words, give me some liberties. But essentially it goes like this. Every morning in Africa, a lion wakes up. And that lion knows that it must run faster than the slowest gazelle, or it's going to starve to death and not survive. And every morning in Africa, a gazelle wakes up. And it knows that it must run faster than the fastest lion. Otherwise, it's not going to survive the day. And the moral is, regardless of whether you're a lion or a gazelle, when the sun comes up, you better be running. Right? And we all like that at one level of, yes, no matter who you are, no matter what you do, no matter what position you're in, if you want to be successful in life, you got to run. You got to run. You got to take action. That's great. That's a great message. However, I've read this hundreds of times, and it finally hit me. Here's the power. Why are they running? The gazelle is running out of fear, right? The gazelle just doesn't say, oh, I'm going to start running, right? It sees a lion and it says, I'm getting out of here, right? So it is running out of fear because it's afraid. The lion is running because it has a defined and definite purpose. It sees a gazelle. If you ever watch any of the documentaries, the lion will sit there for a while and spot out, and it will pick one. And it's amazing because there's cases where when a lion decides to chase one gazelle, as it's chasing that gazelle, it actually runs past other gazelles. But it's so focused on that definite purpose that it decided, I'm getting that gazelle, not any, but that gazelle, that it basically loses sight of all the other gazelles that are out there and focuses on that single definite purpose. So my question is, why are you running? When you get up in the morning, are you getting dressed and are you going to work because you're afraid that you might get fired if you don't? You're afraid that you can't pay the bills. You're afraid that you can't pay for your kids' college, or numerous other items on why you're running. Or are you running because you have a definite purpose, a specific reason of what you're trying to achieve? And now just think about that for a second. Very, very powerful. Very, very powerful, because the reason why you do something changes everything. If you're doing something because you're afraid, you're essentially just want to get it done with, you're not enjoying it, and you're doing the minimal necessary to basically survive. But when you're running with a definite purpose, it's a completely different energy. You're focused, you're alive, and most importantly, you enjoy everything that you do. Now, I want to take that and flip it to cybersecurity. Why do most organizations implement cybersecurity? This stuff is good. I mean, when I was thinking about this morning in the gym, I always sort of, during my workouts, meditate on the episodes. I'm like, oh, this is good stuff. This is good stuff. Why do most companies implement cybersecurity? Is it because they're afraid? And if you're watching video, you can see me nodding up and down. Or is it because they have a definite purpose and focus? And that right there, more than anything, now there's a lot of technical reasons behind it, but to me, that right there is the number one reason why attackers are winning. It's because companies are not implementing security because they have a clear strategic plan and focus of what they want to accomplish. And like that lion, they're going to run after it regardless of any other little issues. Instead, most companies are running out of fear. Oh, what about ransomware? What about this? What about that? And it's all fear-driven reaction, and it's reactionary to a problem. And if you're always reacting to problems out of fear, you're never going to solve it. You're always going to be acting out of fear. And I talk to a lot of clients and a lot of executives, and it's funny. 99% of the time when I go in and they go, oh, Eric, we're hiring 5 more security people, or we increased our budget by $3 million. And I ask, well, why are you doing that? Never, ever, ever. I'm sure there's somebody out there, but never, ever, ever do I go, Eric, we sat down, we understand what we want to accomplish as a business and what that looks like from a cybersecurity standpoint. And we created a strategic growth plan that lets us accomplish that. And in order to do that in the most effective manner, we need additional people and additional money. So that's why we made the investment. Never heard that. I said 99 because I'm sure they're out there. I didn't want to say 100. But 99+% of the time, it's always, well, Eric, haven't you heard about all the new ransomware? Haven't you heard about this attack or this exposure or that exposure? We're concerned that we might become the next victim. We're concerned that we might go in and get hit by this attack. All those answers are, Eric, we're afraid. We're fearful. So we're just going to throw people and money at the problem. And then I always ask a follow-up saying, okay, great that you're concerned or fearful, or whatever the word is you want to use, of these attacks that are out there. But what is the plan? What is the clear, focused, strategic plan that you're going to take in order to handle this? And that's when I get a lot of, very interesting. So let's go into it. World-class CISOs identify problems before they become fearful and identify strategic solutions for solving it. How many options do you give your executive when you put together budgets? The way most departments, including cybersecurity and CISOs, do budgets is they give a single budget either based on a number they're given or on a previous number, and they try to fit it within that, and then they go and propose it, and then it's horse trading. Well, maybe you need this, or maybe you don't need that, and it goes back and forth. But what if you did what world-class CISOs do, which is look at the problem without any limits, saying, okay, if we want to accept this level of risk, if we want to go in and accept the risk that it would take us 5 days to detect attacks, And we have a strategic plan for seeing, visible, and responding. And here's what that's going to cost. And then we have a plan that if we want to be able to accomplish this objective, and once again, measurable is good, so that's why I usually use detection, visibility, and tracking numbers, because let's face it, if you're going to detect attacks within a year, you need less money and less resources than if you're going to detect an attack within 10 days. And you're going to need less money and less resources than if you're going to go in and detect an attack in a day. So wouldn't that be a much more focused way to approach cybersecurity and build out a plan? And then put a time frame. We're working with clients now where we just put in a plan, one client in particular, in November. Their security was like it was really, really bad. They knew it. They had some breaches. They had exponential growth. So lots of factors there. So I came in and gave options. And I said, it's going to take 8 months for us to get this in play. Now, you have lots of exposures out there. So I could run in fear, and for the next 8 months, we could just run after the different attacks that are out there, run scared, run fear, and do some random stuff. And in 8 months, maybe we're a little better than we were. Or I can put together a plan recognizing over those 8 months, things might happen, and we have folks for handling it, but we're staying focused and aligned on the plan. And they always agree. And everyone always agrees and always says okay until the oxygen masks drop from the ceiling of the airplane. And what I mean by that is, if you've ever been on an airplane, and I travel as much as I do, so it's actually happened a few times. When everyone's on an airplane, and before it takes off, they go, in case of an emergency, oxygen masks will fall from the ceiling and put yours on first. And everyone's, yeah, makes sense. Everyone agrees. Everyone says okay or listens, or like me, you actually recite word for word what they're going to say, right? Because you know what they're going to say. And yes, I do put down my book of reading and I do listen even though I know everything they're saying, because it's a respect factor. I mean, they're doing their job. I'm there for them to keep me safe. So the least I could do is at least give them the attention that they deserve. And I encourage you to do the same thing, right? Always treat people the way they want to be treated. But everyone's always calm. Everyone says, okay. Now, hopefully you'll never experience this. But if you're ever on an airplane where the pressure drops or something happens and oxygen masks fall from the ceiling, do you think everyone just goes, no, people freak out. The one case it happened, I kid you not, the person next to me literally grabs it and freaks out so much they rip it out of the ceiling. They're like, I'm like, what are you doing? Right? And then they're freaking and they're trying to grab them. I'm like, stop. So I had to take theirs, reconnect. I mean, people freak out when things don't go as planned. Right? I always say that everyone has a plan. Well, you can do the Mike Tyson. The Mike Tyson version of it is everyone has a plan until you get punched in the face. Now, I don't like getting punched in the face, so I use everyone has a plan until the oxygen masks fall from the ceiling, right? And then everyone freaks out. Same thing happens with companies. So we're working with this company, started in November, and basically says it's going to take about 8 months. So June, July, we're going to have this in place, implemented, and we agreed to do 10-day detection. That's what they could afford. That was the plan. Now, what do you think, of course, happened in January? I knew it was going to happen at some point. The oxygen mask fell from the ceiling. They got hit with ransomware. And I had an incident response team, and I said, handle it. And the rest of the team was still doing what they were supposed to. And the CEO comes, I happened to be on site that day because I'm overseeing it as the CISO. It's a big project for us, and I have my team members working on it. I just happened to be on site checking in. And the CEO comes around up to me, what are you doing? I'm like, what do you mean, what are we doing? We're doing the plan. But we got hit with ransomware. Yeah? And they're like, well, you should take everyone on your team and have them focus on the ransomware. I'm like, no. I said, because if we did that, Then when June and July comes and I tell you it's going to take another 4 months, you're going to be angry and mad. And in the grand scheme of things, we're going to get through this. So let's stick with the plan and not be distracted. Let's be that lion that was so focused on that one gazelle, we're going to run by other gazelles. That's okay, because that's what world-class CISOs do. So world-class CISOs have a clear plan of execution, and they give options. So when I brief companies after we do assessments and roadmaps, I'll go in and basically say, and I don't like it, but the executives often call it, okay, Eric, so you have the bronze, silver, or gold option, right? Or you have the level 1, level 2, or level 3. I'm like, no, I have, based on what I think your budget is and what I think your team is, what I think you're willing to spend, what you currently have in place today. If we get them focused and aligned, what resources you have today, I believe we can put systems and methods in place consistently and reliably catch the attacks that occur against your organization within 9 months. Now, that's current resources today. Now, I don't think that aligns with your mission or purpose. I don't think that aligns with what you'd like to do. So I have another option that can catch attacks in 3 months, but it's going to require X amount of increase in resource and X amount of revenue increase. Now, that I think is reasonable, but I just want you to see all the numbers. Ideally, where you need to be is you need to be able to detect attacks within a week, but here's going to be the cost for that. I don't think you're there yet. I don't think you have the alignment, revenue structure, or finances to support that, but I just want you to see the 3 options. Which would you like me to do? Now watch what happens. Now, by doing this approach, you're not only giving options, but you're setting proper expectations. So if those executives go in and say, we're going to stick with what we're doing, we're not going to give you additional resources, then you say perfectly okay, we're going to have a system that it's going to take us about 9 months to detect attacks. So we will get compromised for a period of time. So if that happens, you can't be upset. Well, they could be upset, right? Saying you can't be upset, but we're aligned, right? So we had a client of ours where we told them we would catch attacks within 9 months and we were catching attacks within 6 months. And we had to keep reminding them that we're doing above what we planned. We're actually exceeding the goal expectations that are in place. And I know some of you, depending on where you are in your security track, are probably like, Eric, this is great. No, this is paradigm shift. This is how world-class CISOs act. World-class CISOs have a plan. They show the expectations of the given plan, and they provide options to executives. Now, I'm speaking in the language of business, and they are understanding what I'm saying with clear expectations. The problem is most times, CISOs basically just fight for money, and the executives have no idea what they're getting for that value. The other thing I want to cover, which is aligned with this, world-class CISOs recognize that you have to accept risk. There is going to be risk to the organization. Things are going to happen, and you have to be willing to accept that. I have some CISOs that I work with, and I go in and I say, okay, based on the current resources that you have, do we agree that it's going to take you 9 months to detect an attack? And they're like, Eric, I can't accept that risk. I'm like, I'm not asking that right now. I'm asking the reality of the situation. Based on the resources and money you have, how long is it going to take you to detect attacks on average? And they're going to say 9 months. I'm going to say, great. Now, you give 3 options to the executives. If they are not willing to spend the extra money, then you need to recognize that their risk tolerance is that we are accepting to be compromised for 9 months. Now, if you're not willing to accept that risk tolerance, if you go, Eric, that's unacceptable, I'm not going to be a CISO for that organization, and you can't convince them that that's an unacceptable risk, then you're either going to be frustrated, angry, or you need to leave the organization. But let me help you out here. That's quite normal. And this is where the shift from security engineer to CISO is most difficult. Because typically as security engineers, especially world-class security engineers, we're trained to accept no risk or minimal risk, right? We're not going to accept any risk. I know some great, brilliant security people that I would never, ever hire if they were the last person on earth, because they are masters of finding fault with everything. Right? They will go into any solution and show, oh, there's this vulnerability, this vulnerability, this vulnerability, this vulnerability. And yes, if it's a functional system, it's going to have risks. We have to be willing to accept risks at some level. And that is something a CISO has to be willing to accept. As a CISO, as a world-class CISO, you will never have enough money, resources to make the organization risk-free. And if you do, the organization will cease to function. Business cybersecurity is all about managing risk. It's all about taking calculated risks to accomplish the goal. So as a CISO, you must have some risk tolerance. Now, the trick is open communication. You must make sure you're communicating that risk tolerance to the executives and that you are fully aligned. Everyone is on board that based on what we're spending on cyber, it will take us 9 months to detect an attack. Now, notice the difference. Most people would go in and say, we're underspending on cyber, we're not investing what we should, and bad things are going to happen. That's not accurate data to make decisions. But if I go in and say, listen, what we currently have will lead us to a solution that will allow us to detect attacks in 9 months, that's not under or overspending. That's just setting the reality. This solution delivers those results. And if the executives are okay with that, then it's not underspending. If the executives are not okay with that and they want to detect attacks in 3 months, then it is underspending. But notice the differences is we're taking the subjective opinions and emotion that lots of security people have out of the equation, and we're now focusing in on data alignment and making sure we're all on the same page. So 2 big takeaways from this week's episode. First, why are you running? You can use this in life. You can use this in cybersecurity. You can use this in other areas. When you run with a definite purpose, you're much more happier and successful than you run out of fear. So as a world-class CISO, have a clear plan of focus. Second, recognize that running a cybersecurity organization, being a CISO, recognizes there is risk associated with it, and make sure you have some tolerance for risk, and you do that by communicating with the executives. I hope you enjoyed this episode of Life of a CISO, and we'll see you next week.